Imagine for a moment that your very breath is the echo of something ancient older than the stars, yet entirely new in this form. You see, we tend to think of ourselves as separate from life, like spectators watching it unfold from the sidelines, hoping to be invited in. But this illusion that you are somehow apart from the whole is the root of so much confusion and quiet despair. You are never an afterthought, nor a cosmic accident. You are, in every sense, an intention. The universe does not repeat itself. No leaf, no fingerprint, no snowflake is ever quite the same. So why should you be? There is something about your way of seeing, your laughter, your grief, your questions that could not be duplicated. You are the one place where the totality of all things has gathered itself into a shape, a story, a soul that moves through this particular moment in time. And if that is true, then taking yourself seriously isn't arrogance, it's accuracy. See, the stars do not doubt their shine, nor do rivers second-guess their flow. They simply are utterly and unapologetically themselves, and in doing so, they fulfill their purpose. But we, as human beings, are burdened with thought, with self-awareness, with the strange gift of reflection. And while this makes us beautifully complex, it also tempts us into forgetting that we, too, belong, that we, too, are nature, that we are the universe not looking at something else but looking at itself. When you begin to take yourself seriously, you stop waiting for permission to exist fully. You stop deferring your own presence until it's polished, perfect, or approved. You begin to realize that your being here at all is the permission slip, the evidence, the sign. You were meant to be, otherwise you wouldn't be. And everything that makes you your voice, your instincts, your contradictions, your longing is the language through which life is trying to speak itself into the world in a way it never has before. We often look to others' figures of power, fame, spiritual authority, and we forget that they, too, began as uncertain echoes, trembling in their humanity. What made them luminous wasn't some divine privilege, but the quiet, consistent choice to lean into the truth of who they were, even when no one else yet understood. They took themselves seriously, not in a prideful sense, but in the way one holds something sacred, not because they had all the answers, but because they knew their questions mattered. And so, you must begin to treat your existence not as a problem to solve, but as a phenomenon to explore, to wake up each day with the reverence one might have while walking through a cathedral made of stars and breath and wonder, and realize that this cathedral is you, your life, your mind, your capacity to feel. And when you treat it as sacred, the world begins to bend accordingly, not because it owes you anything, but because you finally see that you are not asking for significance, you are significance. What would it mean if you lived not as a seeker hoping to be found, but as something already discovered, already meaningful, already whole in your incompletion? Would you still shrink yourself to fit into spaces that cannot hold you? Would you still apologize for the way your soul glows at the edges? Perhaps it is time to stop doubting the design of your being, not because you're certain of where you're going, but because you're beginning to trust that you were never misplaced in the first place. The truth is simple: you are not a guest in this universe, you are the home it built for itself. There's a peculiar tension in being human. We're born with this deep, unexplainable sense of direction, a kind of inner compass that quietly points us toward the life we're meant to live. And yet, almost from the moment we arrive, the world begins to shout over that compass. It hands us maps drawn by other hands. It tells us what success looks like, what happiness should feel like, what paths are safe, and which ones are foolish. And so, gradually, we learn to trust the noise over the silence. But silence, you see, isn't empty. It's pregnant. Pregnant with clarity, with presence, with the voice of the very thing we keep searching for outside ourselves. There is a vast difference between listening and merely hearing, and most of us have been taught to hear everything around us, while rarely listening to what arises from within. The trouble is, when we no longer trust our inner voice, we begin to live as perhaps, but shallow. We lose depth. We lose origin. We become copies of copies, echoes of someone else's dream. Taking yourself seriously means beginning to reverse that flow. It means turning inward, not in retreat, but in reverence. It is to realize that the most truthful wisdom rarely shouts, it whispers. And unless you slow down, unless you learn to sit with yourself without judgment, you'll miss the sacred murmur of your own becoming. That whisper is the most honest part of you. It knows what you want before you articulate it. It feels the pull of paths you haven't walked yet. It notices when you're shrinking in rooms that can no longer contain your truth. The world will always have opinions. It will try to mold you with its expectations, and it will reward you for fitting in. It may even applaud your performance if you become who it wants you to be. But what's the point of applause if you've lost the sound of your own soul? External approval is a moving target. One moment you hit it, the next it shifts. If you chase it, you'll always be running. But if you turn within and begin to trust that quiet inner hum, something strange and beautiful happens. You begin to feel anchored, even when the world is uncertain. And this is not a call to abandon all advice or to shut out the world. It is, rather, a call to discernment, to remember that your soul was not born on accident, and neither were your longings. That still, small voice inside you. It is not a fantasy. It's a frequency. And when you tune into it, you begin to live in harmony with something much older, much wiser than culture or trend. You don't need to be loud to be real. You don't need to be seen to be significant. The tree doesn't raise its voice, and yet it holds the sky. The moon doesn't demand attention, and yet it moves the tides. The most powerful forces in existence move with quiet confidence. They simply are, and so should you. Take yourself seriously, not because others tell you to, but because your silence holds more truth than the world's loudest opinions. When you begin to trust your own resonance, you'll stop searching for validation and start vibrating in alignment. Your life will no longer be a performance, it will become a presence. And presence, true presence, is irresistible not because it seeks to be followed, but because it reminds others how to find themselves. Because the voice you're looking for out there is the one you've been carrying all along. We often think of struggle as something that shouldn't be there, something that interrupts the flow of life, derails the plan, delays the dream. Pain arrives and we tighten. Delay shows up and we panic. Silence surrounds us and we assume something must be wrong. But what if none of it is out of place? What if pain, confusion, and stillness aren't signs of failure, but necessary contours in the shape of becoming? You see, the mind is addicted to linear stories, beginning, middle, end. But life doesn't unfold like a straight line. It curls and coils and circles back on itself. It hides meaning in detours. It teaches through tension. Every time you fall apart, you are not unraveling into nothing. You are reweaving into something else, something deeper, more awake, more alive. And yet, we've been trained to rush through discomfort, to label struggle as misfortune, to interpret silence as a lack of progress. But think of the seed buried in darkness. It is not lost. It is gestating. The silence is not emptiness, is preparation. Beneath the soil of your suffering, something ancient and intelligent is at work, reshaping you in ways you cannot yet perceive. Taking yourself seriously means you no longer see your struggles as punishments. You begin to see them as portals, as thresholds, as moments when life pauses not to harm you, but to reintroduce you to yourself. Growth does not always look like expansion. Sometimes it looks like collapse, like winter, like grief. And still, beneath it all, something is moving. Slowly, deliberately, with a wisdom far beyond what the mind can comprehend. You may feel stuck, but you are not still. You may feel broken, but you are not beyond repair. You are being carved into, by experience, just as rivers carve canyons not to destroy the stone, but to reveal its depth. The pain you resist carries within it a truth that only suffering can deliver, that you are far more resilient, far more profound, than you ever imagined when things were easy. There's a strange beauty in struggle. It makes you honest. It strips away what isn't essential. When everything is stripped from your plans, your image, your control, what remains is what's real. The core, the fire, the witness within you that can endure, observe, and grow from everything life throws its way. That witness is where your power lives, and it's forged not in perfection, but in pressure. You don't need to fix yourself to be worthy of your own love. You don't need to escape the hard moments to prove that you're on the right path. In fact, it is precisely the hard moments that are the path. They are not distractions from your purpose, they are the classroom, where your purpose reveals itself. Take yourself seriously by taking your struggle seriously, not as something to glorify, but as something to honor. You're not here to be untouched by life. You're here to be transformed by it, to allow every scar, every ache, every disappointment to be woven into the sacred story of your unfolding. And when the world tells you to move on too quickly, when it asks you to bypass your pain for the sake of keeping up appearances, remember that wholeness does not mean constant happiness. It means presence, depth, a willingness to remain with yourself even when you do not feel like a success, because the cracks in your life are not the end of the music. There, where the light enters the instrument, there's a subtle but powerful truth woven into the fabric of our experience, one that most people overlook. The world treats you as you treat yourself, not in some mystical reward and punishment kind of way, but through the quiet, invisible mirror of energy. How you hold yourself, how you speak to yourself when no one's listening, how deeply you believe in your own worth. These things echo outward. They shape the way people perceive you, respond to you, engage with you. The world doesn't define you, it reflects you. And most of us are projecting from a place of uncertainty. We walk through life like we're on trial, constantly seeking validation from the outside because we haven't yet given it to ourselves on the inside. We beg for the world to recognize our value before we've truly recognized it within. And in doing so, we create a loop, waiting to feel worthy until someone tells us we are, and never quite believing it when they do. Taking yourself seriously breaks that loop. When you start showing up with reverence for your own being, you no longer have to convince others that you matter. They begin to feel it. When you move with quiet conviction, without needing to prove anything, your presence alone becomes its own statement. People respond differently, not because you've changed your words, but because you've changed your vibration. You're no longer performing for the world, you're embodying something deeper, something unshakable. This doesn't mean puffing yourself up, or pretending to be more than you are. It means finally allowing yourself to be what you are without shame. It means walking into a room not wondering who will like you, but wondering how deeply you can be authentic, how fully you can bring the truth of your being into the space, whether or not it fits what people expect. The paradox is, the moment you stop needing approval is the moment people start giving it freely. Why? Because there's something undeniably magnetic about a person who is at peace with themselves. A person who no longer seeks the light, but is the light. That light doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't demand, it simply radiates. Now, the world is not always kind, and taking yourself seriously doesn't guarantee that others will treat you well. But it does ensure that when they don't, you'll know the difference. You'll no longer internalize poor treatment as something you deserve. You'll begin to set boundaries, not out of bitterness, but out of love for yourself, and for the sacredness of your path. Everything around you begins to shift when you raise your internal standard. Not because reality is bowing to you, but because you're finally aligned with something honest, something whole. The people you attract will start to mirror the way you hold yourself. The opportunities that find you will resonate with the energy you emit. And slowly, the external begins to organize itself around the internal. You are not here to beg the world to see you. You are here to see yourself so clearly that the world has no choice but to reflect that back. To hold yourself with such sincerity, such grounded respect, that it becomes the blueprint for how others engage with you. And even if they don't, even if no one claps, even if no one recognizes the quiet revolution taking place within you, it doesn't matter. Because you're no longer acting for their applause. You're moving in rhythm with something deeper, something eternal. And that, in the end, is the true essence of taking yourself seriously. To live in such a way that your presence becomes a mirror of truth, not a mask of approval. Because when you begin to walk like you belong here, the world, in time, begins to walk with you. Top of form, bottom of form.